Kuyeba umphakathi siya phambili. Ukuze umphakathi uzemva siba ngalomzuzu besibona kanti khona besiphakathi kwethu. Uze besibonga besibala ukufa bakwasho. Bakadonga besimanazi besilungileyo. Xa besilungileyo kusenzeka zonke izinto ezenzekayo. Thixo kusazi kwakwani. Kuyona umthenisi uthembu loba sibawo. Senzele besilungileyo okusicelayo ngawe Yesu Kristu phakathi. Amen. Amen.
Wamaqu ondela wamkele unkumpi.
Azwelele. Kuyikhaya abamphakanyisi sidwa ngube lesidwesha siyalamkela ekhaya ngokwekunyalalo ikhaya ethu sithi kuni izindwendwe ibhaki phansi kuni izibeke phansi ibhaki inhliziyo eziqhubekileyo yenze umsebenzi wenu wonke uphele konke nona phakathi. Amen. Asiphelile.
Anolod. Let us take this opportunity to thank everyone gathered here, from particularly the different media houses that are gathered here. We gather today at a very sad moment of this family, particularly that from the days of my early childhood, my grandfather, Unkosi Dalpun, the former president Nelson Mandela, has had his entire time to mold me through supporting me and giving me advice for this particular moment, so that I could be able to serve my community, the people of Mvezo. From an early childhood, growing up in Tsofimva, with my grandmother, the late Evelyn Mase, my grandfather felt it was necessary for me to be removed from a homeland reserve so that I could be given an opportunity to better develop. He therefore asked to my mother that I be removed from this area and taken into the city where I could be afforded an opportunity to a better education. Even during the time of the mid-80s, when the country was rendered ungovernable by the youth, my grandfather saw it fit that I should be taken into hiding in Swaziland so that I could be afforded a better education. He has always been there for me, ensuring that I would be able to develop in order to serve my community. I remember returning back from Swaziland when all I had in my head was that I wanted to be a DJ. And he felt very strong that no such of his siblings or grandchildren would ever become a DJ, and advised me to pursue a career further. I went into marketing as well as business management. But again, as early as 2002, he felt that I needed to return home to his birthplace, his humble home where he emerged from, so that I could build a strong foundation. I was very hesitant and very reluctant to taking up the mantle, but he was very persuasive. I recall the final moment when he invited me for lunch after I had tried many times to put up my case that I was very independent and very successful as a businessman. he felt it necessary to usher me back home because he had realized that the life I led in Johannesburg was that of an individual and not that of service to our people. At our lunch meeting, he said to me, "Do you know I'm your grandfather?" I said, "Yes, granddad, I know that." He then said to me, "Do you know I'm the head of this family?" I said, "Yes, granddad, I know you're the head of our family." He said, "It is my wish that you return back home and build a strong foundation for yourself." In those words, I was humbled to see a global icon putting before everything a genuine interest for the development of his own family. It was that moment that I returned home and came to these humble beginnings to find our people and family members as the Mandelas living in utter extreme measures of poverty, living without access to basic amenities. I committed my life henceforth to ensuring that I serve our people and ensuring that I create a better life for all. In the past few days, I have been the subject of attacks from all sorts of individuals, wanting a few minutes of fame and media attention at my expense. In the first instance, I want to express the disappointment at the decision taken by the Mthatha High Court yesterday. I remain convinced that the decision of the court was erroneous, as the court granted a final order in my absence, so I was effectively denied the right to be heard. I will, however, not challenge this further because it will serve no purpose. I must talk to the real root of why this emerged and why an entire family of mine turned against me. This is the very family that has taken their own father, their own grandfather, to court for his monies. I called, therefore, this press conference so that I could address a few matters that have been circulating in the media at this time. Having stood against my family in the case that was put forward by my grandfather's children, that of Anmagaziwe and Anzenani, supported by a number of grandchildren and other members of the family, to try and remove George Bezos as well as the Minister Tokyo Sehwale and Bali Choine as trustees. Having stood against that and made it clear that I wanted no part in it, the family saw fit that, having clearly disappointed many of South Africans and the public from the stance they took, they looked to seeking revenge and targeting a soft target like myself. Many people have been parading as the Mandela family, in particular in the day-to-day decisions of the Mandela family. These individuals were part of the applicants in this matter of the remains. I want to make a few examples to illustrate my point on this matter, particularly when we address the issue of locus standi. For instance, my aunt Makaziwe Phumla Mandela is the fourth child of Unkosu Dalpunga, that being my grandfather Nelson Mandela, from his first marriage to Umamkwati Evelyn Mase. She was married to Uba Ukamaku Balfo and had 2 children, Utokwini and Utumani. She divorced and married Mr. Isaac Amoa, and they have a son called Kweku Amoa. She is in actual fact a Mrs. Amoa and ought to be focusing on the Amoa family issues. My aunt, as my aunt, her role within the Makatu family, that being my father, is supposed to be that of a unifier and a reconciler as Umafungwashe. But so far, all she's had to do is sow divisions and destruction in that family. Tokwini Nobuhlali Mandela, also an applicant in this matter, is the daughter of Tamaku Balfo and Utatobawo Makaziwe Phumla. So she belongs to the Balfo family. She has no business in the matters of the Mandelas. Another interesting applicant in this matter is Dorothy Adra Amoa, who is a daughter of Isaac Amoa, outside the marriage to Utatobawo Makaziwe Phumla Amoa. She certainly has no business in the Mandela matters. Lastly, Kweku Mandela, as it is said, is the son of Isaac Amoa and ought to be Kweku Amoa. He belongs to the Amoa family and has no business in the Mandela matters. Most of the remaining individuals in the list of the applicants on this matter has no business to be discussing Mandela matters according to our tradition and customs. At the moment, it seems like anyone and everyone can come and say, I am a Mandela, and demand to be part of a decision-making in this family. Individuals have abandoned their own families and heritage and decided to jump on the Mandela wagon. The issue at hand that has fascinated the world is not only of interest because it is about the remains of my grandfather's children, but it is curious because of the timing when it was made an issue. We repatriated these remains in 2011 after following all the customary rituals and protocols. For the past 2 years, the people on this list have never raised concerns about the repatriation of these remains. In fact, I am surprised that today they want to make an issue of these matters. I am struggling to date why the matter has become so urgent now when it has never been urgent in the past 2 years, particularly because my grandfather is in a critical state in hospital. Nevertheless, I indicated to the family that the rightful claimant, i.e. the children of the deceased, do have a right to repatriate the remains if now they are against them being here in Mvezo. The issue of the court came as a surprise to me, since the rightful claimants were aware of my position. The issue was different in as far as my own father Mthatha was concerned, because I hold the right to determine where he is buried. I am the chief of Mvezo as a traditional leader and the head of the Royal House of Mandela. This chieftaincy was expropriated from the Mandelas in the 1920s with my great-grandfather, Unkosi Mphakanyiswa Mandela, the heir to Prince Mandela, who was forcefully removed from this area by a white magistrate and was exiled to Qunu, forcing the family to lose its chieftaincy, as well as lose its wealth in cattle and in its land. Almost 87 years later, we were offered an opportunity to assume our rightful place in the kingdom of Abatembu. Since my father had passed on, and my grandfather had indicated that due to his age, he cannot assume a chieftainship, he asked me to take the responsibility. Though reluctant to leave my life and trek to the rural areas, my grandfather reminded me that my first responsibility should be that of service to our people. I was duly installed with my grandfather present, and the current king, Zwelibanzi Dalindyebo, was present in a ceremony attended by my family, traditional leaders across the country, and our political representatives. There are individuals today who opportunistically make claims as to my legitimacy. These individuals wait for all these years to start having these questions. If I was not the rightful heir, I am sure these individuals would not have hesitated to oppose this greater family who assigned me the responsibility to lead the Royal House of Mandela. But I can say that to somewhat, when I can recall back then, my grandfather did prophesize about these days, because randomly when we used to have lunch or dinner, he would ask across the table, which one of you wants to go and live in the rural areas? And starting from my brother Ndaba, Mbuso, Andile, they will all object, no, granddad, we don't want to live in the rural area. And he would laugh and smile and look at me with that cynical sense of humor of his. I always used to wonder what he was trying to provoke. And often he would come back and say, is there anyone who opposes that your older brother should be the chief of Mvezo? And none of them, while he was fit and strong, were ready to challenge his decisions, because of having had many years and decades molding me to be the person I am today. Mvezo is a place still bedeviled by excessive poverty and unemployment. It has no sanitation, no access to clean drinkable water. It has a high school dropout and high levels of HIV/AIDS infections. My focus, with the help of our ANC-led government, is to deal with these challenges and to bring development to the people of Mvezo Komkhulu. This I certainly will continue to do together with the people you see before you, the leadership of the Mvezo Traditional Council and that of the Mvezo Development Trust. I saw in recent media coverage that the King, Zwelibanzi Dalindyebo, is one of those people making adverse statements about my legitimacy and accusing me of wanting to unseat him. I have always responded to this and made it clear to those that are uninformed that the Royal House of Mandela emerged from the left-hand house, that being Ikhiba, of King Gubengcuka. His heir was Mthatha, whose brother was Joy, and in the right-hand house sits the Royal House of Mnqanqeni. The Mandelas, therefore, are the most junior royal house in the kingdom, being in the left-hand house. We have no claim whatsoever to the kingship. This is a laughable matter, to say the least. I think the king wants to make me an scapegoat from dealing with the difficult disputes that he faces within his own Dalindyebo royal house. I therefore refuse to be part of those disputes and appeal to him to leave me out of the Dalindyebo royal family matters. We, as the Madiba royal families, we will continue to be observers to the matters of the great house. As for my brother Ndaba, I'm highly disappointed, who claims in the media reports that I was born out of wedlock. I wish he would say that in the presence of my father. I want to remind him that I do not hand out, and certainly I want to emphasize this, I do not want to hand out our dirty linen as a family in public. But he knows very well that my father impregnated a married woman, which he is a result of that act. Umamzondi Khadeb was married to Lucky Zakaria Mujiha, has 2 children by that man by the name of Amanda and Sydney, who are Ndaba's elder brother and sister. So he should be very careful when he wants to throw insults, particularly to my mother, who still sits by my side, nurtures and ensures that I am able to wake up every day to serve my community. As for the remaining of my 2 brothers, we all know that they are not my father's children. And I want to emphasize this. If you want to go and prove this, it is there in the birth of my own child, uKheya wesibini Zanethemba Mandela. Mbuso pregnated my wife, and this matter has never been discussed by the so-called members of the family who say that they want to ensure that there is harmony in this family. For 2 years, I have sent bishops, particularly Bishop Mbete and Bishop Dabula, to go and appeal, particularly to Ndaba, to come and reconcile these matters between me and Mbuso. he has failed dismally to show leadership as a man in this family. I hope that wherever Ndaba sits, with those that advise him, they may be truthful and honest in their quest. The individuals on this court are coincidentally the same as those that have instituted proceedings against my grandfather. I seem to have angered people by distancing myself from the case against Advocate George Bezos, Minister Tokyo Sehwale, and Bali Chwene, appointed by my grandfather, Madiba, to be in charge of his trust, that being Harmonic Investment Holdings and Magnific Investment Holdings. I still refuse to be associated with the court actions that are a clear squabble over my grandfather's monies. And this too shall come to surface, and you will see the real agenda behind those that sought to come and attack a soft target like myself. I am tired of people who want to use me for popularity and short-term gains. And I hope that as we conclude today's session, we can put this to bed. The facts are there. You may go and find out. You may go and do the necessary tests that are needed in terms of DNA tests. I will always be there, watching, observing, and the real characters that face you will one day reveal their true agenda. I thank you.
Mr. Mandela, can I ask you a question? Jimmy Stone from ABC Australia TV. The Mandela family keeps saying they don't want to air their dirty linen in public. This is pretty explosive stuff. Why are you doing this?
You need to understand that I have sat an entire year and a half to 2 years now, bearing many scars that have been inflicted upon me. And I have continuously sent elders, senior politicians, and members of our Methodist Church to resolve these matters. I have never, at any particular moment, been awarded an opportunity to be heard. And even these court proceedings that have come before you, an injustice was asserted towards me where I wasn't given an opportunity to be heard. And therefore, people want to say that in this family they do not want to put their dirty linen out in public. Yet they, at the very same wedding, label my mother as Nkazana, and then say to me that I'm born out of wedlock, when they know that my father paid lobola for my mother, and they know that my grandfather, while he was very strong and very clear on issues, they would never utter such words in his presence. They are opportunistic of the moment that we find ourselves in as a family.
What would your grandfather think right now about all of this?
It would be a mistake for me to assume what my grandfather would think of it all. But I can say that, like myself, he would be highly disappointed in what is unraveling, because he had given himself ample time and asked every member of the family if there was any secondary thoughts to his own recommendation. I am here today as a result of his own grooming and his own dedication that in his time he should be able to restore an injustice that was served to his father by restoring his father's chieftaincy and his father's household. Yes.
Honorable colleague here from ENCA. Why were the remains taken from Konu in 2011 and brought here in Mvezo in the first place? Is this the wish of Ubawo Nelson Mandela? Is it contained in his will that he be buried with his children in Mvezo?
Thank you. My grandfather's will remains a secret and remains with the people he's appointed to administer that. I received an instruction for my aunt Magaziwe to remove the remains and bury them in a secret location which was in Konu, where she is preparing a grave site for my grandfather. Because this was not an instruction coming from my grandfather, I didn't follow those instructions. I took the remains and temporarily kept them here in Mvezo until we gain knowledge of what my grandfather's desires are, or that of his spouse, Umamunosizwe Grasa Machel. Yes.
What has your grandfather told you about where he wants to be buried?
My grandfather and I, at one particular time, we were sitting in Konu when he had a crew from BBC that was doing the 30-day with Madiba documentary. They followed him throughout the country, covering the different things that he wakes up and does at every day in his itinerary. While we were in Konu, the subject came and he said that I should usher the crew to the gravesite and show them where the remains of his father and his mother are. I then said, no, the crew is at 30 days with Madiba. It is not with myself, granted. He therefore went together with myself and Unkosuzana Mthatha of Mqhekezweni. When we arrived at the graves, which you all know, he then pointed out, this is where my father, Kosum Paganyiswa, lays. There is where my mother, Umampemvu Nosekeni Mandela, lays. Then they asked him the question, so where would you be buried? He immediately, without hesitance, said, I want to be laid right here next to my father. And that is all that I know about my grandfather's wishes.
Yes. What's your comment on the criminal charges that have been brought against you?
I am unaware of the criminal charges that have been brought against me, as much as I was never aware of the notice that was served against me. I was last Friday handing out winter hats and gloves with the Alimdad Foundation to kids in the 6 villages of Mvezo, ensuring that they are able to weather the difficult winter weather that we are experiencing. It was only then at about 2 o'clock that I was informed by the media, particularly SABC and members from Daily Dispatch, that said to me, Chief, are you aware that there has been a court order passed in your absence to remove remains from Mvezo? I said, I'm not aware of this. Ifana nekate sengqoweni, I will wait for this to surface. It was only in the evening that I came to receive the papers that a court order had been passed in my absence. I never even received notification that there was such a matter before the courts. Even the applicant's legal team knows my history and knows my legal team failed to bring this to our attention. And this is the issue that we had to wake up to on Monday and try to play catch up so we can defend. But I was denied the opportunity to defend and state my case. Again, I want to stress that even these criminal charges that have been put forward, I have no acknowledgement of them, and we will continue to inquire and hope that our legal team will be provided with such papers if they do exist. But it is a sad moment in the history of our judiciary, which has done exceptionally well, because particularly at the hour we are in, to find ourselves that in a free democratic society of South Africa today, that even an idiot is not being able to be given an opportunity to be heard. I am therefore highly disappointed and hope that we could draw lessons from this experience. Yes.
As Elveli Guloi said in the dispatch, I want to come back to the issue of the exhumation of the bodies. I want to find out how many bodies or remains were exhumed, because there's an issue of some siblings of Mandela who were twins who were involved in this exhumation. I want you to clarify that. And lastly, after you received the instruction from your aunt Makaziwe to move the remains to a secret location, and then you took them here temporarily, you said, and what was the process that you followed? And did you consult with anyone? Did you get permission if you needed permission? Yeah. So my question briefly is how many remains were exhumed, and what process you followed to take the remains from Kunu to here, and the process.
There's been 3 remains that have been exhumed. That of my late father's brother, Unkosizwe Vumi Tembekile Mandela. My father's sister, Makaziwe Buyiswa Mandela. And my father, Unkosi Zwelzim Makatu Lewanika Mandela, whom today I find myself have been torn apart and come to the realization that as an heir to my father, I have no say to where he should lay, and have not been afforded a moment to express my own opinions about his final place of rest. There's
Mike Woodridge from BBC. You said that the remains of the 3 were brought here and buried here with full customary ritual and tradition. But do you accept, and you've told us what Mark Ziwe said to you, but do you accept that they were brought here without wider family consent, which is what was alleged about this, and do you accept that that has contributed to the very acrimony and feuding that you've so graphically described within the family this morning?
I might be upfront that we learn through different experiences and we draw our lessons from those experiences. But it is the norm today that in this family there is no consultation on many matters. I did what is a normality in this family. For example, of all the plans that are being implemented in Qunu in regards to my grandfather's final resting place, I have not acknowledgement of that. Even last week, I was ordered to remove the pigs that are there in the farm, which, as all of us know, that my grandfather is a passionate farmer. He came back home to his humble beginnings and built a farm for himself where he kept cattle and pigs. But today all of that is being eroded without any consultation, and therefore we begin asking ourselves, and I think in the years coming we will ask one another, who are the Mandelas? Because that is going to become the essence of where to from here. We need to define ourselves. We need to be clear who are members of this family. When we convene family meetings, who sits in these family meetings? Yes, last question.
From the SABC. When you say you want to clarify who are the members of the Mandela family, is it unclear at this stage?
I have said earlier in my statement that we seem to be on a Mandela wagon where everyone wants to be a Mandela. And I dare say, in the case that awaits all of us, where my grandfather has been brought to court by his own children and the applicants that have supported that claim, you will have to sit and ask yourselves, who are these applicants and where do they come from? Once you have thoroughly assessed each and every applicant, name by name, on the list, you will be able to start scratching out some names. And this is the injustice that I found myself in, having not been afforded an opportunity in court to address the applicants that took me to court on the issue of the remains. Because we need to know who is applying and what claim they have on these remains.
How is your grandfather?
That was the last question. As we conclude the session, I would want to follow on the last echoed question here. My grandfather continues to be stable while in a critical space. We have been grateful as members of the family from the updates that we are receiving daily from the presidency, that of Ubao Ngamalala Zuma, who through the ANC-led government has been at my grandfather's bedside, through the military doctors that have been rendering service to my grandfather and ensuring that he recovers. We are also grateful to the doctors and nurses that have continuously been on my grandfather's assistance in hospital. But we will forever be indebted to the many South Africans and people in the global community who have rendered many prayers and wishes for my grandfather's speedy recovery. We can all at this particular moment focus on that and hope for his speedy recovery. And I hope that after we conclude this session, I beg of you to not be called and be asked for interviews, because at this hour, I want to focus on what matters the most, being with my grandfather and ensuring that I am able to be with him at this moment when he needs us most, and continue to focus on the people he sent me to, that being the people of Mvezo, who I will forever be proud of for making me and looking to me as their traditional leader to ensure that I strive to better their lives. Thank you.